Hello, and thank you for joining us for this presentation on how to put your garden to bed through ecological fall cleanup practices. Many of us noticed the sharp decline in birds, butterflies, insects, and other wildlife. Our home gardens, backyards, and landscapes can all play a vital role in supporting our beloved wildlife. Hopefully, many of you have already made the decision to incorporate plants that are native to your ecoregion in your gardening adventures. Thank you so much for healing our environment one yard at a time. The rest of this presentation will help us be better stewards of the land by rethinking what we know about fall cleanup. So if you are looking for the typical protect this specific plant by wrapping them in burlap, plant these bulbs and aerating your lawns, this is not going to be where you find those answers. Let's dive on in and learn a little bit more about the ecological based practices we can facilitate in our gardens. How many bags of yard waste do you put on the curb every fall? Well, I have some great news. Just about everything you would put in those bags will compost into healthy soil. Our native plants have evolved to thrive in the rich soil that occurs naturally under trees. In this photo, there may be a lot of leaves, but the flower spring beauty is blooming in the dense and rich soil. The morning cloak butterfly perched on the stump is matched to the surrounding colors to avoid predators. Many butterflies have developed chrysalids that look like a dried leaf for protection when they are most vulnerable. There is another world living beneath those leaves, all of which plays an important role in our environment. Most of our practices today is really going to focus on recreating what nature would be doing if we were not here doing our own thing. While this may be ideal, it is not always an option given HOAs and other municipality rules. In the case of leaves, the ideal solution is to just leave them where they fall. However, that's not always an option for everybody. An alternative, if you live in the city or want to keep your neighbors happy, is to rake them into your garden beds or into a designated area, perhaps a compost pile. A designated spot for compost is a better option than bagging them up and having a big truck haul them off to some undisclosed location. Try to avoid the use of leaf blowers and mowing the leaves into the lawn. While our vehicles have restrictions and items like catalytic converters, these same strategies have not been applied to our gas-powered leaf blowers and lawnmowers yet. Hopefully, as our politicians take notice, they might include that. But until then, take the time to slow down, enjoy raking your leaves and allowing them to decompose to replenish the soil. Now, you might be wondering, why is there a photo of a tree accompanying a slide about plants and stems? As you can see, this nest is huge and consists of sticks and other woody stems that we would typically banish to bags to be carted away. I mean, think about how much time it took to hunt down and peck out each one of these twigs and put it specifically where it is to protect this little eagle nest. And I don't know why I said little, because it is quite large. So stems play a vital role in habitat for our wildlife and support the food chain they rely on. While it will take longer to decompose, plant material will also compose just like leaves into the same great soil that our native plants rely on. So leave the sticks and twigs makes it much easier for the wildlife to build their homes right alongside our own. So again, for the ideal method is to leave the stem and plant material where it is so wildlife can use it, and it will eventually break down into that healthy soil, I promise. Not all of us live where this is an acceptable option though. So a great alternative is to trim stems back down to about 6 to 18 inches tall. Not only will this make it a little bit more visually appealing, it will also help prevent next year's flowers from flopping over because there's a little bit of a framework there for them to work with. And when you do cut these down, again, that top material makes great additions to your compost, or you can even just leave the seed heads right there in your garden bed. It'll provide a tasty treat for our wildlife, and you don't even have to set up a bird feeder. It's a fantastic option. And while we're on the topic of adding things to our gardens, even though they are very cute, sometimes it is best to avoid butterfly houses and bee hotels. A lot of butterfly houses end up homing wasps, which they do play an important role in our ecological systems. However, typically where we place those little butterfly houses is very close to where people will interact. And we want to make sure that people have good experiences with our gardens, and most people don't want to be chased around by a wasp. So providing them space where they'll be safe is awesome. And we can have a little bit of both. Same with the bee hotels that are typically filled with hollow stems. Again, it is very close to recreating our ecosystems out there. However, it concentrates a bunch of the population all in one spot. So disease can spread faster. And oftentimes when you purchase these items, they don't come with any care and maintenance that comes with it. So, I mean, if you're already out cutting off the stem heads off of your stems, might as well just leave them where they are so that the bees can spread out and enjoy their space. And you don't have to go through and clean out a bee hotel or a butterfly house throughout the year. So for the life of a stem, I did mention that it is best to cut back to 6 to 18 inches tall. However, the stem has a very important role to play. I know there's a lot on this slide, but this is a part of the digital handout that I'll be giving you later at the end of this presentation. So in order for insects to get the most out of our plants, it will take at least 3 years, maybe even a bit longer. In the first year, the plant is growing, but some crafty insects will implant their larvae into the living tissue. The plant isn't harmed and grows around it to form a gall, like the one on the photo. Depending on the species, the adult insect could emerge that season, but some may overwinter and emerge the following spring. So all the more reason to leave the stems on your plants as long as possible. If you can't wait until spring, use a sharp, clean tool to trim stems 6 to 18 inches tall. New growth will grow around the stems. Through that harsh winter, they'll start to age and hollow out. Sometimes this old growth can help support the current growth so they don't flop over as easily. It is in the second year that bees and other insects will start to pack the hollow stems with their larvae and food. Again, it is important not to remove this old growth until temps have raised above 50 degrees the following spring in year 3, so the bees can emerge. So it is important to keep leaving those stems year after year so that they can use them as their empty spaces. These stems will decompose in place, but sometimes become unsightly and even sometimes diseased. So it is all right to clean them out from time to time, just to make sure that they are healthy homes for the larvae. And again, a compost pile will be happy to take the stems, or you can just leave them right there in your garden and let them decompose in place. So the life of a tree could very well be its own presentation, but for now, let me try and keep this short. Even once a tree dies, it has so much life to give. While it's standing, it is considered a snag, like the one in this photo. Here you can see birds have drilled holes to eat the bugs, and then probably a different bird came along and widened the hole to make it its own home for the year. As you can see, just even in its first few years of death, trees can have a huge important role in our ecosystems. So if you live on a large enough property, ideally it's best to just leave the tree where it is, provided it won't damage anything when it comes down. And please note, I said when it comes down. This isn't a question of if. Gravity affects us all. So for those whose tree might cause damage, ask if the arborist can leave as much as your space will allow. So when the tree does come down, it doesn't fall on any houses or sheds or playground equipment if you have kids. Select branches can also be used to edge walking paths and garden beds. Um, One of the other things, so that would be a nice way to keep your garden looking nice and tidy and keep your city officials happy with you. One of the things to avoid though is grinding out the stump. I mean, it's just a noisy process to begin with, but you can ask the arborist to leave a bit of height on the stump, and this gives you a bunch of creative opportunities. There are some great artists out there that can carve the remaining stump into a sculpture, which will add a great feature point for your garden. If you have kids, perhaps they would like a fairy garden and the stump could be a home, just attach a door and a roof to it. Or if you can attach a bird bath to the top, just make sure that you keep it clean and keep the water, if you have harsh winters like we do, keep the water warm for them so they can still drink it throughout the winter months. Or you can even just clear the area around the stump and scatter native plant seeds around it to start a garden bed. This way you don't have to worry about digging around the roots. The seeds will do what they do best and just start growing around them. As you can see from the picture, you know, again, the stump will decompose on its own, and this is just a small sampling of life of what grows in the wood as it decomposes. So a few bonus topics for you to consider while working in your garden this fall. When splitting plants, regardless if they're native or not, keep out for wildlife. I was shocked to find in this photo that a migratory monarch, one of the last ones of its generation, before it starts its travels down to Mexico, was hiding in this non-native autumn joy sedum. You know, we all have to kind of make some concessions in our garden, and autumn joy doesn't take over quite as prolifically. So I was using it to fill in a few spaces, but thankfully I was able to replant the section without disturbing the monarch. And then we got to watch it emerge about a day later. It was very beautiful to see, and something that could have been potentially destroyed because, you know, I was too busy moving in the garden. So it's always good to keep an eye out whenever you're out there to enjoy the ecosystems that we are influencing. Another aspect to consider is to turn off your lights. Even indoor lights can pollute the outside, so putting up simple window treatments to keep the lights from shining. I'm sure everybody has seen the moths collect on their windows when the weather is nice out. But even fireflies or lightning bugs, depending on where you are, they have a hard time finding a mate in all the light pollution. They found that female lightning bugs will actually not flash as often and find their mate when the lights are too bright. And another important factor, most migratory birds travel at night. I know that a lot of us have seen the flying V of the ducks during the day, but there are actually a bunch of birds out there that take their flight at night, and all of our bright lights can distract them and confuse them, or even have them sleep instead of travel. Fall decorations and even some of our winter decor, think pumpkins and Christmas trees that we cut down, both of which a lot of times end up in our landfills. I'm actually out in the country here in New York. I'm not in the major city. And many of our farmers feed pumpkins to their cows, pigs. So if you have kids, take them out with your old pumpkins to the farm and let them feed some animals a nice tasty treat. Goats, I never knew this, but they love to eat the pine trees that we've cut down for Christmas, provided that you haven't sprayed them or covered them in tinsel. You know, we want to make sure that the goats don't get sick either. So it could be a fun little family tradition to make sure that even our non-native Christmas and holiday decor gets taken out and put to good use. And then some of the holiday wreaths, I haven't noticed them as much, but they're made from invasive species because that particular species has an awesome looking seed pod. Well, unfortunately, those seeds are still viable, and it's not difficult for them to take to ground and then take over. So we can help mitigate our spread of invasive species by just maybe passing over and finding a different wreath for your front door for the year. All right, so I wanted to keep this presentation short. For those who are here with us live, it is kind of early in the morning. Like I said, it is a beautiful fall day for us here in upstate New York, and I would love to be out in the garden doing some work as well. So this is our nice little TED Talk on what to do for your garden. Since I moved through kind of quickly, I wanted to include a QR code to make it easy to go to our downloadable. And then this way you can actually take a simple checklist of the things that we covered today and go out into your garden and get some work done as well. The link will take you to a Google Doc. I chose to do it this way because this will allow you to make your own copies. And if we come across anything that might change, everything seems to be, as we learn more, we do better. We wanted to be able to make changes as we go. So keep in mind, this document will be here for a while. You can always check back, you can give it to your friends, get the word out there to really help promote our native gardens. And then on one side of the document, there is also the details on how to cut down your stems as well. All right, then, let's see. So let's go forth as ecological stewards of our gardens and have a wonderful day. All right, I want to make sure that I stopped the recording. Okay, I did. So let me drop another set of links for you guys in the chat. While I'm doing that, go on ahead and send any questions over. I know that was fast. I kind of wanted this to be more like a TED Talk for you guys versus a very long drawn out presentation. So let's see. Let me get those links for you real fast. Oof, I got too many things open on my screen. I can't see anything now. Hang on a second. All right, so I know that some of you are sending questions through the chat directly to me. So there are those links. I'm also going to make it so that you can unmute yourself. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So let me go over to our questions here now. Actually, you know what? You know what? We still have some questions coming through. I'm going to let them keep piling up for a second. And there we go. I'm going to advance our slide. So as some of you know, this was through Wild Ones. And our chapter specifically is the Capital Region New York chapter. And I wanted to share a couple of events that are coming up. Our next one is involving municipalities and HOAs. This is with Michelle from Greentown Consulting. So she really knows what she's talking about. If you found that you liked some of the ideas in today's meeting, but you're just not sure if your city would be all right with it, or you live in an HOA, she knows how to approach them in a way that will allow you to really allow your natives to shine. So, and that one's Zoom only. So if you're not in the Capital Region area, you're welcome to join us again. I cannot speak entirely about how specific this will be to our region or not, but I'm sure if there's something specific about your state, Michelle might have some resources for you. For those of you who are here in the capital region, we are excited. We are starting to plan our second annual native plant seed swap. This year it's going to be November 12th at the Thatcher Park Visitor Center. We will again be swapping seeds, but we have included a bunch more activities. This is definitely a family fun event that all should be welcome to come and join us and learn more about native plants, make some eco-friendly decor instead of the ones that include invasives. We'll have some awesome projects for that as well. So it'll be a fun-filled day for sure. All right, so let me go over to questions now. Well, that's way too big. Let's see. So Stacy writes, my native plants have done such a good job of attracting pollinators that I now have a nest of yellow jackets. I think they're native, and also ground bees in my garden. This makes it difficult to work in that part of the garden, which is, of course, it's always sometimes necessary to do some work in the gardens. And the spouse is allergic to bees. Any suggestions for coexistence? Ooh, Stacy, I might have to get back to you on that one. I have to admit, I recently moved to my property and it is quite large, so I am still frantically trying to get more pollinators in here. So we haven't ran into a lot of issues. I have seen and heard a lot of people having success where they take a brown paper bag and you kind of puff it up so that it looks like a nest. You can tie off the top good and tight because you don't want any holes or anything else might try to move in there too. And you hang it up in the area where you don't want them. So I'm wondering if you have a spot in your garden where you need to go work. I just don't know how early you would have to put that out there to prevent them from growing in. And the ground bees are very difficult too. I don't know if you can mark out where their hole is and like put like a little ring of rock around it just so that you don't end up stepping on them. But if you have a smaller garden, you might not be able to get away with that either. So yeah, Stacy, I think I have your email too. So I will keep, if I find anything, I'll forward it to you. Our next question, any recommendations for a veggie garden? Specifically, if you found Asian jumping worms in your beds. Oh, I think that's Kate who sent that in. I feel for you with the Asian jumping worms. I have been diligently looking for them in my own garden, and I think I'm still in the safe zone. You know what, I have not looked into the Asian jumping worms that much, just because, again, I haven't had to deal with them yet. There's always so much to learn here with all of this. When it comes to the Asian jumping worms, I would suggest talking to PRISM, P-R-I-S-M. There is a capital region division. I'm sorry, Kate, I'm also assuming that you're here in New York. I mean, even if you're not in New York, they might have information that you can still use and how to help mitigate Asian jumping worms. For the veggie garden, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask. I tried to put in a veggie garden this year, and I've had more success with the wild tomatoes that I didn't plant that came back from last year than the tomatoes I actually planted this year. That might be a better question for the Cornell Extension offices. They know more about vegetable gardening than I've tried. I lucked out and got one watermelon. That's about as good as I did this year for a veggie garden. Let's see. Okay, so AWS said that she can't see any links. ADS, or AWS, excuse me, if you could send me a message with your email, and anybody else who can't get the links to work. I probably have your email from when you registered, but just to be safe, I would like to, I'll probably send it out to everybody. But AWS, if you would like to send me your email too, I will triple check to make sure you get it. And then JS said, Not cutting down old growth until the temp was 50 degrees. So 50 degrees in spring, at that point, the bees that are overwintering in your stems will start to wake up. So like I said, that stem cutting back, I first heard that concept and I really thought that it was just something that fall I could just leave my stems in my garden. And I never really thought about when the bees would actually be putting their larvae into the stems. So that was that whole, in the first year, you leave your stems up in the fall. If you need to cut it back, that's fine. Just keep that 6 to 18-inch height on your stem so that the following summer, the bees will pack their larvae and some food for them through pollen into that stem. And then you need to let it overwinter one more year. So in that third spring, pretty much, you'll be waiting for temperatures to be over 50 degrees so that you know that the little bees have all emerged. Actually, they might not emerge as bees. They might emerge as larvae and finish their transformation outside of the stem. And I guess if you really can't wait, because again, I know everybody's got slightly different situations that they're in. If you have to cut it back, try and leave the stems someplace like on the top of your compost heap until summer and then mix them into your compost. At that point, they should all be out. So it's really more or less how the bees know, hey, it's time to wake up and go find our lovely flowers to pollinate, is what that 50 degrees was talking about. Oh, Sharon, thanks for letting me know that you still see a recording button. If I still am recording, that's fine. We'll just have the questions. Nothing wrong with that. Let's see. I still have some maple leaves from last year in my front garden. They didn't decompose over last winter this summer. What's the best way to deal with them? So I'm still trying to perfect my composting skills too. A lot of times when you decompose in place, okay, well, let me back up. A lot of times when you have a designated compost pile, you're also turning the leaves from one bin to the next bin, or adding other things as well, more nitrogen-based stuff if you have too many leaves. I'm the other way around. I don't have enough trees on my property, so I don't have enough of that nice leafy carbon. I have too much nitrogen. So yeah, for a few things to try to get them to decompose a bit faster, could you throw some more, like maybe some of the weeds that you just pulled that are still green and mix them in? That might speed up the process a little bit as well. And even just taking a rake and going out and stirring them up might be what they need. They do still need a little bit of oxygen in there, and also water levels. Yeah, sometimes decomposing in place or composting in place gets a little challenging in the sense that we don't have as much wildlife coming through and churning things up for us. I actually got chickens to turn my compost for me this year. Let's see.
I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
That was my question, and I just want to clarify. Those leaves are still in flower beds. Just they are mainly under bushes and tall grass. So it's not a question about a compost pile. It's a question about, like, I left them to decompose in place, almost.
Right, yeah. And that decomposing in place, it does take them a little bit longer, because like when you have a designated compost area, you're also adding, like you need a certain ratio of carbon and nitrogen. So when you have a compost pile, it decomposes faster because of that. And then, like I said, also turning it. So if you wanted to take your rake out, I would say do it here sooner rather than later, or wait until that spring after 50 degrees. So everything that's hiding in there has kind of already emerged and is out foraging. You could give it a rake a couple times in early spring and into summer, and sometimes turning it and making sure that it has a nice moisture. I think somebody told me that you want to be able to pick up and be able to squeeze the material in your hand, and it'll feel damp. It'll kind of hold its texture, but it won't crumble apart and fall. Like if it crumbles apart and falls, then it's too dry and it needs more moisture. I would be a little careful with the moisture too, with it being around some of your plants since it's right in place. I don't know if you want to keep it wet, maybe pull it away from your plants if you have a little bit of space in your garden.
The thing is, the maple trees will be shedding leaves again soon.
Right.
So I'm thinking, do I remove old leaves that did not finish decomposing and just shred them for leaf mulch for next year?
Yeah, I would say
Or
you're probably all right to keep leaving them. I know it's going to get deep, but I mean, if you think about when you go out for a hike on a path through a wooded area, there, it does kind of pile up. I know aesthetically it might not look as appealing depending on what you're trying to have your garden look like, though.
well, try
Really
to keep
be
it
a
as
push.
natural as possible.
Right. um, hmm. And since I don't know how big your yard is either, I'm assuming since you don't have a compost area, you don't really have a spot that you could pile them up, could you?
I don't have a compost pile for a different reason.
Okay. Oh yeah, that too. If you're not careful, you can definitely attract some of the bigger wildlife that we don't need to be attracting into our neighborhoods.
Yes, yeah, the area where my garden is, I cannot really have a compost pile.
Right. Hmm. I'm like, hey, would you like to come and bring them out to me? And that too, I mean, it's still not the best ideal way to do it because you're involving, cars and such to move them. But yeah, if you have a neighbor who does have a compost or has a barren garden that they want to start building up their soil health, maybe tag team and see if you can share it that way.
Oh, I have a friend who usually shreds leaves for leaf mulch for his veggie garden.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
it just I am torn between like last year's leaves that are kind of useless now. Do I
right.
rake them and give it to my neighbor, and whatever falls next, leave it for next year, or leave my old leaves? I'm just wondering, like, is there anything still staying under my old leaves that I should be careful about?
I mean, I'm not because there's just so many different species out there, and I'm still learning about all the different ones. I'm not sure when do they actually take to ground. I'm almost thinking, would it be best to again wait until that spring when it's 50 degrees out? But could you get the leaves to him so that he can mulch it and use it in his vegetable garden? Because I know that time frame right there is very tight. I don't know. Did that make sense?
Kinda.
Right. I don't know. That spring window seems to always be the best. If you're really worried about it this year, though, I would say probably get out there today and get the old stuff raked out. If you're really worried about too many layers and, like you said, it looking messy because there's just too much.
Yeah, the trees are huge, so the layer of the leaves is seriously thick.
Yeah, like I said, I miss having trees. Our lot was unfortunately very monoculture, all grass that I'm like, come bring me the leaves too. Yeah, I think that might be your best bet is to maybe just go out today, get the old leaves out and see if your vegetable farming friend would mind taking them now. And then maybe next year have it be a part of your spring cleanup. Yeah, because if you have a small lot of land and you've got a big maple tree on it, I could see it filling it up pretty fast.
Yes.
All right, so let's see here.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Last year, I raked the leaves in a ring under my 2 trees in the front yard. However, the leaves just blew away. Any suggestions? You know what? I had that problem too, where I used to live in Toledo, Ohio. I don't think my neighbors liked me very much because they all blew into their yard. Maybe a low little fence, maybe even just a wire one, and put a halo around it of wire. If you want it to look prettier, I mean, there's other prettier gardening I'm totally losing my train of thought now. I can see what I have at the house right now that the previous owners left us, and it's like cute little pieces of wood that have been stapled onto something so that you could form like a really low fence. I just wouldn't stake it too low into the ground and then just leave it up maybe through fall, winter. I don't know. Spring gets so windy around here. Maybe, what is it? The lion roars in March and it gets super windy. After we get through that windy season, you could take the little halo fence down around it to help hold it in place and, benefit from that nice decomposed soil. So do you have any links for more information on native plants? So Kate, we are slowly working on talking more about native plants. Your name looks so familiar. I'm pretty sure you're on our newsletter. So our newsletter every month that we put out has like a native plant of the month that we talk about. Its growing conditions and really cool photos and what it looks like throughout all the different seasons if we have those available to us. I would say the New York Flora Atlas, if you just Google that, it is a database that will tell you if the plant is native to New York or not. It is provided, it's, I believe, a nonprofit, and it's all people who work and live in New York. They are, in the industry, they know what they're talking about. They know what plants are native here or not. So if that's a part of the question is what's native and what isn't, they're the best to go to for that. However, I find that the website doesn't get into some of that other, I hate to say it this way, cute, fluffy stuff that I was just talking about, like what does it look like? I think milkweed has really pretty seed pods and such. So that's what we try to include when we do our plants of the month. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't really have like a straight up list just because there are so many of them that's how I kind of do my work. If I find something that catches my eye, I figure out, I make the plant's identification and then I run it through that New York Flora Atlas to make sure it's actually native here. And I do have step-by-step resource of that on the Capital Region Wild Ones website. Under our resource tab, it walks you through how to use iNaturalist. It's an app, and also you can get it up on your computer too if you're not into a smartphone. And you can identify the plant itself and then go over to the New York Flora Atlas. Ideally, one of these days, I would love to make it a little bit more simple than that. And then I believe our blog also has tags, trying to make sure if I remember tagging the native plants of the month so that you can kind of get more of that fun detail. It's nice to know what, a jack in the pulpit's going to look like when it's in bloom, what it's going to look like in summer, just the leaves, and then its little seed pod, pretty red thing in the fall as well when you're trying to plan. So that was a long explanation. I hope that worked out for you, Kate. So when should you cut down your plants during the fall temperature month? Like I said, the fall, if you're cutting down just and relieving that 8 to 16 inches, I don't think it really matters that much. Like I said, I like the hands-off approach. I don't want to say I'm lazy. I got a lot of other things going on and trying to promote wild ones and native plants. So a lot of times I don't cut down anything. And then, like I said, I just try to leave it for as long as possible and pull things out as it goes. If that's not an option, yeah, during the fall, I would say whatever day is nice and pretty and beautiful out that you want to go out and enjoy your garden and trim things down to that 8 to 16 inches. The temperature thing is really more for the spring side if you have to clear out your garden a little bit more to maintain that aesthetic. That you want it to be over 50 degrees so that the animals and creatures can emerge. I guess, I don't know, if you're going to do fall cleanup, I would say earlier in fall, maybe before they start to do that hibernation. But those bees are busy all year long, or not all year long, but all through the summer. So they're already going to be in the stems. But at that point, you should have already trimmed it. So I guess it's kind of up to your own discretion if you do need to trim back. I would say, again, like I said, if you're in upstate New York, it looks like a beautiful day. You could go out and do it today if you want. So the pollinator pathway website has a lot of links for native plants. Yeah, I think the pollinator pathway is one that I do check in on. I use a couple different sources when we write the blog about the native plant of the month, just because I want to try to provide all that information in one spot so that you're not jumping from one website to the next website. Uh, and I think one of our goals this winter, when we're not distracted by garden projects, our goal is to also get a book resource list as well. So it'll have, I think, a couple different categories is how I'm thinking it's going to go down. They'll have things like uh, Doug's books, Bringing Nature Home and such as inspiration. And then let's see, one here, Native Plants for the Northeast by Leopold and Heather Holmes. Yeah, that's another one that's on there. And I'm going to try to categorize it so that it's like why we should plant native plants and inspiration, and then how to actually garden with native plants and how to identify plants as well. Because I know not everybody likes the computer that much. I have a couple reference books as well, but I find that a lot of the reference books aren't quite as detailed as the New York Flora Atlas. And I don't know if they'll ever actually publish a book or not. And, you know, with climate change coming up, we don't really know how that's going to affect our native plants either. We might see a change in what's actually growing here and not. So another essential native trees and shrubs for Eastern New York, Dover and Woolridge. Pollinators of native plants. Oh, Pollinators of Native Plants is Heather Holmes's book. And I want to say Heather Holmes's name sounds oddly familiar. I think a lot of her pollinator research focuses on bees and our native bees, not our honeybees or anything like that. And I want to say wildones.org on their webinars. I want to say she spoke last winter, and there should be a recording of that. So if you're really interested in our pollinators and how they overwinter, I bet you that one has a lot of information in there too. It's Heather Holmes's. If I have the right name for the person that's in my head right now, she has a lot of great information. All right, I think that is all of the questions. If you don't like typing them in, like I said, I did allow you guys to unmute yourselves. I know that this was kind of a faster, shorter presentation. Let's see. Also in those links, there is a survey. I will probably send that survey link out. I will admit this is my first really bigger presentation, not talking directly to our leadership team, talking to a group of other people that have various different gardens and landscapes and such. So I would really appreciate feedback on the survey. We tried a new time as well. We were thinking about changing a venue location, and if something like this would be of interest as an in-person hybrid type meeting or not. So, you know, just trying out a few new things, making sure that we're reaching as many people as possible. I know fall is a busy time. I want to say that Five Rivers has their festival today. Thatcher was doing something too, that I don't know if Saturday is all that great of an option, and we would love your opinion on that. So feel free to hit the survey, and you can also request other topic ideas as we go about planning our events. I know that the seed swap, I think we're trying to find speakers for that as well. And we could try to find a topic that you all are interested in. So other than that, let me see, scroll back down. I'm not seeing any other questions. So I think we're gonna wrap it up. And I think I'm gonna go disconnect for a little bit and maybe go explore one of those parks. Have a great day.